Shalom, welcome back. This is lesson number 17. And without further ado, let's begin. If you see me put the two yods, this is a way of expressing the name of God without writing it. It's a very common terminology way it's used, but it's not writing the actual name of God. So I want you to understand the fact that yes, this passage utilizes God's name, and so we're going to just understand that this is the euphemism we're going to be using. So, the Lord, Li. What is Li? Li is a preposition. Okay? So here we have a preposition. And the preposition is the preposition for. Okay? So you see here is the yud. This is the ni pronoun. So here we have a preposition with the pronoun. Also, you can explain this as literally, this is a prepositional phrase. Okay, a prepositional phrase is a preposition with obviously its object. Okay, so Adonai li, the Lord is for me. Lo, so now we have here, this is a permanent state. You have to understand the difference between permanent and non-permanent. In Hebrew, we have different ways of expressing a negation. So here we're going to look at these different ways of expressing a negation. What's a negation? A negation is nearly the words that you say in order to express a negative statement. Okay? For example, ein. Ein, this is only used with the present tense. So when we're speaking in the present tense, you would use ein. For example, if I said shome'ah, which means literally is hearing, and then if I said I am not, I would say eineni shome'ah, I am not hearing. Okay? So ein is the present tense, and of course there is nouns that are pronouns that you can attach to this, which is the objective pronouns, or the subjective pronouns, excuse me. You can attach to this, and you can look at the chart of on the website. If you go to the website, you can find the chart that has this the negations, and it teaches you also. You can look at the chart for negating verbs, whether you want present tense, past, future, or command. Okay, so here's the present tense. So whenever we want to negate something in the present tense, we would say ein. So if you're referring to yourself, you'd say eineni, I am not. If you're referring to somebody else in the second person, you'd say enaich, or you'd say einecha. So that is expressing that you are not. Okay. And so forth. We'd have other pronouns we can attach to it. So this is only used with present tense, and it's very important to understand that this is the tense that you use for present. The next one is lo. Lo has two forms of negation. So one form of negation is just expressing the act of something that is not. Okay? Lo ish po. You would say no man is here. Okay? So here, that is just a negating statement. Now, when we're speaking of reference to a stipulation by which you are stating this is a continual basis of something that is not, then lo will be used. And this one, lo, is going to be used for both the past and for the future. So past and future, when we use the word lo, we're talking about something that's a habitual state of something that is not. For example, if we say lo ta'aseh literally will mean you will not forever be able to do something. Okay? That's the concept of what we find with regard to lo. Lo ta'aseh. If you were to use the past tense, lo asiti, I didn't do, then you're explaining the same concept but a little differently. You're explaining it in the context of what you did not and what did not exist. and therefore lo is used for that concept. Okay? Al, on the other hand, is what we use in a command form. And you can have two command forms you would use. Lo, which is perpetuating command, which means you are never allowed to do this, period. Versus al would be more of a temporal command. If I said, for example, al ta'aseh, you shall not do, I'm not saying you shall not do it ever, because al is expressing a temporal state. Okay? So this will be the temporal state of a command. Like I said, if I said al ta'aseh, you shall not do, you're expressing the concept of you shall not do, but maybe in another circumstance you'll be permitted to do that. Versus lo ta'aseh, okay? Lo ta'aseh is a permanent state, okay? So this is a permanent state. So the permanent state outweighs the issue of, obviously, the temporal state. So we have to understand the differentiation between present, past and future, and of course the command. Whenever we're given a command, al is what we will be using. Okay? So and whenever we speak in the command form, in the command you're going to not be using the command verbs, rather you'll be using the verb in the future with al in front of it. So that's how we would express the command form in Biblical Hebrew. So now that we're done with this part, we say, Adonai, the Lord is for me, lo ira. So lo ira. So here we have to look at this and notice that we have lo is always predominantly going to be in front of a verb. So you kind of have to look at something, for example here. If you ever see lo in a sentence, you have two possibilities. Either A is going to negate the existence of something, which is typically going to be a noun, or it's going to be the verb is in front. So in this case, it's a verb that's in front of it. So ira, this right here, obviously is my pronoun. What I have left is the root. So you can see the Yud Resh Aleph, that is the root. So this word means fear. For lo ira, I will not fear. Now the verbal form of this, the Yud, is going to be the Yuds that do not disappear. Because why? Because we learn that there are two types of Yuds, one that's defective and one that is not. This is the non-defective form, and so therefore it will follow that same point. So lo yira, I will not fear. What does he mean when he said lo yira? He's saying permanently, I am not going to be afraid. That's the expression he's giving. He's not just mainly saying that I will not be afraid, which means I'm not going to be afraid at this moment, but maybe I'll be afraid other times. He's literally saying, the Lord is for me, I will not be afraid. I know in my confidence that God is for me, I'm not afraid. I know that He will take care of me. That's what he's saying. So ma now is introducing a question. This is an interrogative. So now we have the word ma, which is the word for what in Hebrew. Ma, what? Ya'aseh. So here we have, once again, we have a pronoun. So the pronoun is telling me that this is a verb, okay? Because we should know by now how to identify verbs, okay? My essay, what will he do? All right? Asa is the verb which means to do or to make. So ya'asai, what will he do? Li, to me. Now remember, if we go back into the other video that I did, that I told you and stuff, that how do we know the differentiation between when la should be versus el? La is only used whenever these two verb forms are never used, and that's when a verb of direction or a verb of movement, a verb of movement and a verb of speech is being utilized. So when a verb of speech and a verb of movement is utilized, which can be a verb of direction in a sense, these things, we will never find the word l used in a grammatically correct form. So any other time by which we find not these two verb forms used, the verb of movement and the verb of speech, we are always going to see lamed used as two. And then lastly, it is the word Adam, which means man. Now Adam doesn't mean man like I'm a man. Adam is referring to humanity. Adam is referring to people, okay? And it's kind of a very interesting thing because there's a lot of words we have which can be very confused because of how it's translated. And that's important. Like for example, Am means people. But what's the context of Am? It means a group of people who have a close inner connection to one another socially, economically, as well as belief-wise. Okay, that's an Am. When we're talking about the issue of people in general, as in just regarding to not as in there's any kind of social connection, we use the word anashim for people or men. Okay, if you're using in a more generic sense of the word for people, then you use the word Adam, or as we also use it in the noun construct, Ben Adam, the son of man, basically. All right, the son of Adam. So Adam is referring to just people as a whole, as a complete whole, any person. It could be any nationality, any gauge whatsoever. So that's what we find when we're looking at the word Adam versus he's not saying Ish. Okay? Ish would refer to man as being a male human adult. That's what the concept of man be used in this context. So it's going to have to be understood that when we're looking at words, we have to understand that yes, there is going to be some confusion because how when you're translating that some words may seem very similar because you've translated a word in that same similar form. You translated the word Adam as people, or Am as people, or Anashim as people. And we have to separate this in our head to know vocabulary, what this vocabulary word means, so that we can see, okay, Adam is not the same as Anashim, and Ashim is not the same as an Am. And once we understand that in the vocabulary, then we're able to grasp the idea and concept of what's being said. And so this is the end of lesson number 17. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you next time as we go into lesson number 18, as we learn more biblically Hebrew right here on these videos.